the man is like, well, how come I have to pay alimony or child support and things like that? And the wife is not saying, well, that's because that's what the statutes require, Bob. They're saying, do you want your kids to starve? Don't you love your kids? Like that's their posit, which I'm actually on board with. That's true, right? Is like, and then the spouses, the guy typically in these cases is like, well, no, I love my kids, but I just, I don't want to go bankrupt in the process.
Folks, today I've got Joe Dillon on as a guest, and Joe is a divorce mediator, a financial specialist, and a co-founder of Equitable Mediation Services. And Joe's approach is really, I don't want to say different, but he really focuses in on helping couples avoid that destructive litigation, and instead they try to get them to work towards a collaborative, financially informed divorce agreement. And that all sounds so legal and everything, but it is, I think, right? It's all
Yeah.
legal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm sure we're gonna have a heck of a ride because this is a complex topic that a lot of people go through, but really don't know a lot about. So that's what I've been finding as I talk to people, and I'm proud of you that you said mediation because I get a lot of equitable meditation. So people think I have a yoga studio, Chuck, and I mean, I try to keep people calm, but that's not exactly what I do. So
And you know what's crazy? I looked up some statistics, and of course, first-time marriages, we've always, I hate saying always, but we have always heard that, at least in the US, we're near 50%, roughly 40 to 50% of first
hmm
marriages going to divorce.
Yep.
But we have so many people going into second marriages, and that's even higher. It's like 60 to 67% of second
Yeah.
marriages end in a divorce. So these
Yep.
mediations and financial agreements are so important. So hopefully we could touch on some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've become in the country, and it's no value judgment to anyone. It's that divorce was, forbidden. It was, viewed as verboten and religious, reasons or for economic reasons. There was a lot of different reasons behind it. But then as people got more comfortable with the concept, they said, well, I'll just get married again, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just get divorced again. And I talked I was just in a casual conversation with someone, not on a podcast, but just talking to someone. He's like, yeah, my buddy, he's been divorced 6 times. And I'm like, okay, that's probably you need to sit down on the couch with a therapist and really kind of unpack what's going on for you. That's not just a, love them and leave them situation. You got some issues dealing there. I'm no therapist, man, but you got something going on that you should probably think through.
Definitely. And then, boy, if that person is paying any type of support, that's just
Right.
a lot coming out, a lot to lose, whether you're a man or woman. Um,
Yeah.
it's way too much.
Yeah.
With that
Absolutely.
being said, Joe, uh, I know that we can argue like there's no tomorrow. That's so easy to do.
Yeah.
But why is it that people have a hard time negotiating?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny you bring that up. It's a book I'm actually writing about that very topic. We're taught when we're growing up, we're taught to kind of fight for what we want, right? Don't let anybody bully you. If somebody takes something from you, you take it back. Like all those messages we've gotten. And if you get something, then I give and I lose, right? It's win-lose. And it's really hard, especially when you're in that situation, Chuck, where it's emotional. You're thinking to yourself, well, now this person who used to be the love of my life has to become my mortal enemy because I need to extract as much value out of this as I can. And the mistake people make is they think it's a zero sum, right? Where it's I win, you lose. But the fact of the matter is, in any good negotiation, as a mediator, I've been a negotiation professional for 30 years now. It really is what we call expanding the pie. It's finding a way where we can both win and we can both walk away feeling good. And if we let our brain take over as opposed to our heart and our emotions, we can realize that yes, I can do this and you can do that and we can both have what we want if we're willing to like give and get. And that's what my role is actually as a mediator is to not judge, it's to not award, it's not to litigate, it's to try to get people to expand that pie and understand that we can come to an agreement that works for everybody and your kids and neither of you has to walk away from here feeling bad about it. So that's really what my role boils down to.
Well, I'm going to sound maybe chauvinistic, and hopefully I don't to the audience out
Sure.
there. But like you said, heart and brain, and we always associate the woman with the heart. They
Sure.
go that route, and the man is the supposed to be the more logical brain thing. Do you
Yeah.
find that in these mediations, or we'll just even call it a divorce, where the women um, with the heart, and I'm going to say the bad heart, so they're going to take the man for everything he's got because you hurt me. So I'm going to hurt you back? Or is it kind of the opposite? Is it more men that do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's two ways you can go about this divorce. You can do attorneys, right? Drive through the attorney process. And in those cases, we do hear a lot of folks now, we don't get those kind of clients. But
Mm.
you're absolutely right. We'll have meetings with client couples where it's an initial meeting. We'll try to see if we're a good fit. And there are phrases that you can tell as a professional that these people aren't going to become clients. For example, and typically again it's not chauvinistic, it's statistical. 70% of divorces are filed by women, okay, 70. And so that tells you right off the bat that the initiators skew female. Of those female initiators, they fall into two camps. One is the, as you said, I want to get everything I'm entitled to and then some. I've been hurt, I've been harmed. I need a lawyer to protect me, a lawyer to pound you into the sand. That's not our client. The other folks are the ones who are like, you know what? You're a good guy. You're just a clueless wonder. You're a great dad. You're a great provider, but I just can't do this anymore. Let's figure out a way that we can both walk away from this with our dignity intact and our wallets intact. Those are our clients.
Mm.
And even in those cases, Chuck, where you get that amicable, and I know that's a funny word, but it's an amicable, peaceful, trying to do their very best to separate, those females still are leading a lot with the heart. They are still leading with the appealing to the man, for example, where the man is like, well, how come I have to pay alimony or child support and things like that? And the wife is not saying, well, that's because that's what the statutes require, Bob. They're saying, do you want your kids to starve? Don't you love your kids? Like that's their posit, which I'm actually on board with. That's true, right? Is like, and then the spouses, the guy typically in these cases is like, well, no, I love my kids, but I just, I don't want to go bankrupt in the process. And that's where, as a mediator, I get my aha moment. So that is a perfect example, Chuck, of how we can expand the pie. I want to show you I love the kids, but I don't want to go bankrupt in the process. And that's where we say, okay, we both share a common interest here. We want the kids to be as happy and healthy and as supported as they can. How do we do that? So we get off the what the law says I'm entitled to, you don't love your kids, and we move into what is our interest here, and that's what it is. That's what negotiation strategists like myself are looking for all the time. That one thing that both sides will say it in a different way because communication's kind of strained at this point, but when they do, when they say it, I'm like, hey, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing this. And they look at you and they're like, yeah, I guess that's what we're saying. It's because, Chuck, they've been probably talking past each other for 20 years and they've had a hard time speaking to each other. So it takes me to be the like UN interpreter to come in and speak French and German at the same time.
The way you're just telling us right now makes it so clear, especially when I think about you as a mediator and then I think about a divorce attorneys and things like that. They're going by the
Hmm.
law. The law says this, you're going to pay
Yeah,
this, rather than
right,
it being fair, because like you said, you want it to be amicable. And especially if you have children, you don't want to say, okay, you
right,
get all this money. Now one side is poor. Well, I still get the kids now, but now the kids are going to be poor with me.
right.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense when you do it that way. So definitely, folks out there, if you're thinking about this, go to a mediator.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. We work with a lot of clients in Washington State. We practice in 6 states, but one of our favorite places to practice is Washington and specifically that Seattle metro area because you have a lot of high tech companies and you have a lot of complex compensation. These folks aren't just like working at Target and making a salary and coming home and maybe they get a little $100 bonus in their stocking or whatever. These guys and girls are getting options and RSUs and these bonuses and these step down payments. And that's where mediation really shines because the law doesn't really explicitly talk about what do you do if somebody has unvested restricted stock units. It's kind of open, but that's a major issue that a lot of folks we also practice in California here and in Washington face. So when you can get with a mediator, and as you probably know from my background, I have an MBA in finance, so I'm a little bit of an odd bird. You can start talking to them about the financial ramifications, about what this is going to look like for their family over the next 4, 8, 12 years. And that gets them off the I want what I'm entitled to, and it moves them into are you going to be able to afford, that summer camp and those dance lessons? Are you going to be able to put money in the 529? That's really what we're talking about. That's really what we want them to focus on, especially when kids are involved. And even when they're not, can you both retire? Will you both be able to move on after this? Will you be able to buy a house or pay your grocery bill? Those are the things we're really trying to get them to focus on. And of course, the law exists. We can't ignore it. We can't practice in a vacuum. As we say in our profession, we practice in the shadow of the law. It's like this big thing, Chuck, looming over us, lording over us, right? And we can see it in the shadow, but we want to be able to work in our own space, and that's what we do with mediation.
Joe, like you said, you're a financial expert as well. A little bit of
Yeah.
an odd bird, like you said, in this situation.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the most common financial mistakes that couples will make during this divorce? Because, like we were saying earlier, it's an emotional thing. They've invested themselves emotionally. Now you're
Yep.
cutting the ties, and it's hard to let go of some of these emotions. Um, so, there's got to be some common financial mistakes that they make because of this.
Absolutely. Number one, so this is actually a double back to backer. The first thing that I see a lot of is that we ask people to do budgets and they don't like that. They do not like it because they think we're calling out their spending. And I'm like, listen, how are you going to go into a negotiation if you don't know if you don't know how much you spend, you don't know how much to ask for. All right? This is just kind of 101. You don't go into battle unprepared. And you'd be surprised, Chuck, at how many people have no idea what they spend month to month. And we have this like 120 lines long or whatever budget workbook with all this stuff. And then they start seeing it and they always come back in a session and they're like, man, that was cruel and unusual, Joe. And I was like, look, we all think we spend less than we actually do. I'll give you an example. And, we're both music guys. I'd ask you, it's like, how many streaming services do you have, right? You got Spotify, you got Apple, I got, it's like, and I think all of that in just even my music stuff, YouTube, it's like probably about $119 a month. Now, in the grand scheme of thing, that's perhaps not a lot, but if you multiply that over the course of a year, that's $1,440 that you just said, oh, I don't spend that. Well, yeah, you do. And there's tons of those examples, Chuck. So that, haircuts, I won't say this too loud because my wife is in the next office, but pedicures, manicures, hairstyle, like all these things. And after a while, we get them to recognize that that's tied to the other mistake, which is not planning for the future. They don't think that they've got a budget moving forward. They don't have to go out and research cost of housing or, where we both live, right? So I'm in California. It's like crazy to live places. You need to realistically understand, can you stay in the same school district? Can you live here? What's it going to cost you so that you can ask with expertise, not just because I'm entitled, I want this, blah, blah, blah. It's listen, hey partner, if you want our kids to remain in this school district and within a reasonable driving distance of the school they go to, this is what housing costs. Here's what I'm going to need in child support to help me maintain a place, even if it's an apartment, right? A place in this area. That kind of stuff. That's probably our number one driver, where they're not thinking about how much they spend presently and they're not thinking about how much they'll need moving forward, right? You got it. So it makes sense?
Yeah.
The other thing I see is they do the deciding before the discovery. So that's my own personal phrase. People will come in, and I love this. This is We got it all figured out. Oh yeah, oh man, Chuck, that's just to put your hand in your head, like, okay, it's gonna be a long one. Let me get another cup of coffee. Be right back. Those folks think they're proudly announced because they decided they're gonna sell the house. They think that's the only decision, and then they go and they make this decision in a vacuum, and they don't have the information as to what it's worth or how much it's to buy it out or the mortgage or any of that. Then I come along with my discovery process, which, as you've seen on TV, right? It's not when it's like when lawyers ask for info or courts, or in this case, a mediator. I need your tax returns, your pay stubs, all those things. And then I start asking questions. I'm like, well, why would you sell the house? It looks like it's almost paid off. It seems like a valuable asset. Could you rent it? Could you? And then somebody goes, hey, I never thought of that. That's a great idea. And then the other person goes, wait a minute, we decided we're selling that house. And now they're mad. And now unintentionally, I've created an argument. So the other big danger is do not decide anything until you talk to a professional. You think you're helping yourself, you're not. One party invariably is going to be upset because I'm just asking questions. I'm not trying to upset your apple cart. I'm just asking questions. And when I start asking and somebody starts saying, hey, that seems like a good idea, now I've driven a wedge between these people. And so we warn people, just do what we ask. Just send us all the stuff. We'll deal with it together. So those are probably our two big ones.
You know, you hit this thing about people and human natures. We tend to, like you said, we make our decisions, we convince ourselves, and then we
Yeah.
convince ourselves it's right and it's the right way to do it or the right thing to do. And it's so
Yeah.
hard to get the person, an expert
Hmm.
professional such as yourself, saying, have you thought about this? Of course I have. This is what
Right.
I want. Because rather than really thinking it through, they've thought it
Right.
through enough to convince themselves, and that's it. That's got to be a difficult thing to kind of steer around or go through.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, the good news, what you have is, my style, I tend to be very directive. I'm
Mm.
more of a truth teller. There are other styles that are more facilitative, like, okay, Chuck, tell me how this makes you feel, right? It's more therapeutic approach. Like, how would you feel about paying that much in child support? Whereas I'd be like, listen, if you pay that, your kids don't eat. Where do we go from here? That's kind of my approach. And the advantage that I have when I've got clients that run into these circumstances, like I said, is look, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but what I am here to tell you is that once I draft this thing and the courts approve it, it becomes legally binding and there's no going back. There's no
Yeah.
change in your mind. So we need to get this right the first time. It's so the old statistic I remember reading about the Wall Street Journal, one of my favorite things. The Wall Street Journal was once talking about their proofreading department. And they said, and this was at the time, it's going back when print was pretty big, so maybe about 20 years ago. They're like, if we have like 1/1000th of our, copy is incorrect, we will have printed 1.4 million incorrect newspapers. Like basically it was telling you like it seems minuscule, it seems unimportant, it seems small, but then when you look at it down the road, the outcome of that small mistake, decision, etc., it can turn into something that's really a problem. And that's what we remind people. And I'm like, look, better to hash it out now and get it right now because you don't want to come back and see me. Or worse yet, you're going to hire a lawyer who then the other person's going to have to lawyer. Then you're going to wind up in court and then you're going to be spending lots of money. And let's just get over our anger. You didn't know what you didn't know. That's fine. I'm the professional. I'll take the blame here that I asked the question and we can just move on.
That's the other big thing you just hit on is financially. It's a lot more expensive to go to a divorce attorney, right, than it is to go to a
Yeah.
mediator.
Absolutely. Like, when you think about a lawyer and you think about retainers, we track this stuff, of course, and retainers on average run between $7,500 and $10,000 a person. So that's just to say hello.
Hmm.
And we all know that when you have an attorney, you're not only paying the retainer. That's what they're just getting you started, getting you onboarded, getting to know you, and then from there it just escalates. And we kind of joke and we say, for the cost of less than one attorney's retainer, you could mediate your entire divorce. And that's filing and paperwork and me and all of it. And at the end of the day, it's also the escalation, right? We've talked about this where An attorney's job, and look, some of my friends are attorneys and I don't begrudge them at all. It's the system that they're in. Their job when you hire them is to fight for you and you alone. That's their only job. If they don't, they're a bad attorney. Well, guess what? Now your spouse also hired an attorney whose only job is to fight for them and them alone. And so what happens? You're just going to fight and dig in. That's great. If you're, at the Lowe's or the Home Depot and a box falls on your head, of course you want your attorney to, go to the mat for you and get you that settlement. But if this is the spouse or soon to be ex or the parent of your child or somebody that you claim to have deeply cared about, that's not the right approach, in my opinion. You're harming everyone. You're damaging the relationship. You're damaging yourself financially. And at the end of the day, you're going to burn bridges. And guess what? You're going to feel like crap because this is a person that no matter how angry we get, right? I'm married, how mad I get at my wife, I still love her at the end of the day. And I'm going to let that go and it's going to move on. Even in a divorce, I find that people still deeply care about each other. And then when you hurt somebody like that, it hurts you too, right? It digs into your soul, and you're kind of like, yeah, I was kind of a crappy person, in that negotiation, right? Unless you're, a narcissist or somebody like that who has no semblance of, the right and wrong, which, there are people out there, but I'm saying in general, we want to avoid conflict. We want to avoid that driven approach.
Yeah. Joel, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up because I think it's
Yeah.
important. Part of your experience is you are a child of a divorce family, I
Yeah.
believe, right? So you've
Yeah.
experienced this as a child. Um,
Hmm.
my question really is, when is it that the couple should know, or what are some of the signs that the marriage is breaking down?
Yeah, I like to think of marriages as partnerships. We think of
Mhm.
them as relationships, right? Relationships or romantic relationships. We get married, we profess our love, those kinds of things. Call me old-fashioned and a romantic, Chuck, but I'm a tactical guy by nature. My job, finance guy, mediator guy, and I think of the relationships in both emotional and practical terms. And there's got to be a balance of both. And when you stop viewing your spouse as your partner and start viewing them as an enemy, annoyance, those are the signs that they're starting to get those fissures. And in my experience, and this is something I'd like to share with you and your audience, in my experience, that's something that this is a book I'm actually working on. It's what I call the marriage bank. And, of course, finance guy is always thinking about a relationship in terms of deposits and withdrawals, right? So, the other day, totally true story. Literally 2 days ago, my wife had a rough night sleeping. So I went downstairs and I said, I'm going to make a really, solid breakfast. I'm going to make bacon, egg, and cheese on a bagel, right? This is not how we normally eat for breakfast, right? But this is comfort food, a hot cup of coffee. It was a cloudy morning. She hasn't slept. This is going to get her day going. And she came downstairs and she's like, you didn't have to do that. Like, that was so nice, but you didn't have to do that. I was like, listen, I know I didn't have to, but it seems like you had a rough night, and who doesn't love bacon, right? In this example, my wife likes bacon. So that was an example of where I say that's a deposit in the marriage bank. Now, I didn't ask for anything in return at that time, but I made a deposit so that if in the future I asked to say go out with my friends or go to Vegas for a weekend or do something, that I can then make a withdrawal from that bank and I know that the balance is still high. And I
Mhm.
use that analogy with client couples because I think about it. Think about how many deposits you're making into your relationship and how many withdrawals. And part of it is trying to make as many deposits as you can. And when you continue to want to make those deposits, do those nice things. Make that sandwich. Take out the trash even though your spouse didn't ask you. That's really when the partnership is still there. And I find that that's really what sustains relationships over the long run. Once the initial flame of all the passion, it's now a nice slow steady burn, right? Those are the fires that burn the best, right? The fires that are slow and low and embers are still hot. So that's what I think when I think about relationships. Are you still willing to do those things? Go out of your way, support your spouse, have those difficult conversations. If you find yourself avoiding those conversations, being more self-centered, being more inward focused, that's a sign that there's some sort of fissure and the kind of balance in your marriage bank is kind of moving a little closer to zero. So that's just kind of a question for your listeners to ask themselves if they're in a relationship, married or otherwise, even if it's a friendship, right? It's something like, am I still willing to engage? Am I still willing to do this? Am I still, or do I find myself avoiding, withdrawing? And those are good signs for you to kind of know where you're at in terms of your relationship.
I must be just like you, Joe, the financial guy, at least in my
Yeah.
thinking, because before you even said that or why you were saying it, first thing that popped in my head is good or bad, they're an asset. And what do you
Right.
want to do with your assets? You want to protect your assets and you do everything you
Right.
can. It's an investment in time,
Right.
and it grows. So I know
Yep.
some people might say, well, sometimes we let go of our assets because they become no longer an asset. But really, I think realistically, that's what we want to do with our assets is we want to
Right.
invest in it. We want it to
Hmm.
grow. And like you were saying, you're doing these nice things because you're putting it into the bank, depositing.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's, I'm not married, but all these things that you're saying are just so logical.
Yeah, and Chuck, you hit it, man. That's it. It's it's people. So, look, again, I want to qualify. I have one of our dearest friends is a therapist. We have many therapist friends, and I'm a huge fan of therapy. If you need to talk something out, get something off your chest, please go to therapy, 100%. But when it comes to relationships, and I've read the books, I've read the Gottman books and the love language and what color is your heart and all those things, right? Because I want to understand the full spectrum. And every time I walk away from reading one of those books, the truth of the matter is I feel like I went to a restaurant and I didn't eat and I leave hungry. I saw the food on the buffet. I took it all in visually, but I wasn't satiated. I didn't eat. And I look at when we think about relationships, and that's part of what I'm doing. I have this thing called the Power Up Method. So that's, where people can find it. Powerupmethod.com is like, I say, look, here's a practical framework for having conversations that matter in a relationship, in relationships that matter. Nobody ever teaches you that. They teach you to use like I statements and ask how they're feeling and love languages. And I'm like, yeah, that's all well and good, but that doesn't help me settle the argument of if I can go to Vegas with my friends or we're going to my in-laws or my parents on Thanksgiving. That this doesn't help me tactically. And at the end of the day, all of our relationships really boil down to a series of decisions, a series of things that have to happen in order for that relationship to thrive, survive, move forward, or derail. And a lot of times when we have conversations as people, we're emotionally driven and we're not really thinking of the other person. We're thinking about what we want. We're in this attention economy right now, right? Where we drink from a fire hose all day through social media, email, Slack channels, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of it coming at you. And we sometimes just need a place to go, okay, I have a really important conversation I need to have with this person that means something to me, friend, spouse, relative, otherwise. I need a calm way to have this where things don't go sideways. I can express what I need. I can make sure they get what they need from this, and we can both walk away happy. And that's what after 30 years as a negotiation, that's what I'm starting to notice. I'm like, people are terrible negotiators. They're great communicators because they yell and they scream and they pout and stomp, but they don't really effectively negotiate. They don't realize that that's what a relationship is, right? Because when you think about it, if I'm in a relationship with somebody and my spouse and they have no reason technically to give me what I want. If they happen to love me and they say, "Well, I want Joe to be happy." So yeah, okay, I'll go to the baseball game with them. Ugh, okay. But they're not really getting anything out of it except they gave in to me. And that's very nice that they did. So part of what I try to express to people is if you're going to ask for something, you need to give something in return. I call it reward with value. That's the R in the
Hmm.
power up. And say, look, okay, hun, if you go to the baseball game with me, we're a Chicago Cubs fan. You go to a baseball game with me, I'll tell you what. We'll then go to the dog park and we'll bring our dog and we'll spend the afternoon at the dog park and then we'll go out to your whatever your favorite sushi restaurant. Like we'll do something for you, and that's part of it. Chuck is just trying to recognize that relationships are two-way streets, and to go to your original question. It's that's another sign is that when it's all giving or all taking, that's also a pretty strong indicator when the relationship's in trouble.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. I want to remind folks that I'm having a conversation with Joe Dillon, and you can find out all about Joe and what we're talking about at the website, equitablemediation.com. Uh,
Yep.
that Joe and his team work in 6 different states, so you can find out all that information. Joe, is there ever a good or healthy divorce, or
Yeah.
does that make sense? Is there such a thing
Yeah.
as a healthy divorce? And what is a good or healthy divorce?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, most of our clients are like that. Some of them are so friendly to each other, I scratch my head and I go, why are they getting divorced? So you're like, hey, something's wrong here. I don't know. But yeah, absolutely, Chuck. Those divorces are the ones where, as we've been talking about, where people acknowledge that I can't take you to the cleaners because then that's just going to bankrupt you. It's going to create animosity between us. I'm not going to feel good as a human. And you, really, when you look at it and you take the approach that I do and you put everything out on the table and you explain, there are a finite amount of things to go around. There's a finite amount of time, of assets, of parenting time, etc. And we're dealing with these constraints, whether we want to or not, we are forced to by the nature of the situation. Good example. You walk into your boss's office and say, hey, listen, I'm getting a divorce and I'm going to have to pay support. I need you to double my salary starting next Friday. Your boss is going to like lean back in their chair and be like, I'm sorry, Chuck, what? That's not happening, my friend. And that's what people don't understand. So when you, for example, in that one, you get into the alimony and conversation and the child support conversation, I have to say, look, your incomes are still your incomes. Now you're just spreading them across two households instead of one. How do we acknowledge that, recognize that both of you need to live? And when we keep doing that and we keep bringing it back to both of you, we, collective, collective, people start catching on and then they kind of bust my chops a little, but I'm totally okay with this. They're like, see, Joe, see what I did there? I cared about what the other person said. I'm like, that's great. Good job. But that's it. If we can get them on to recognize that they're on the same page, despite the uncoupling of that relationship, that they still both need to thrive and survive post divorce, that's when we can get a lot of breakthrough. And then people look at each other and sometimes they look at me and they're like, man, I wish you were in our relationship earlier. I wish we had learned some of these skills. We wouldn't be here where we are. And that's a true statement. That is definitely a true statement. If they knew how to negotiate like my wife and I, the way we have conversations, we had one last night on the couch, lasted an hour and nobody screamed, nobody yelled, and ended with a hug, I love you. And what argument in the household do you know that ends with a hug and I love you? It wasn't an argument. It was a conversation, an adult, structured, organized, not throwing, jagged rocks and, spears and daggers at each other. It was just, this is what's going on. And I want to follow this framework and I want to speak to you as an adult and clear that air because that's really also, right? Resentment. Think about your friends, your family. You could think of anybody, right, Chuck? You right in your brain, you're picturing that one person right now that when you see them or you see them in your caller ID or you see the text pop up or you're like, oh God. Like, you've got something in your craw about that person, right? What is it that rubs you about them the wrong way? It's probably because they're a taker. That's probably what it is. They're a drain on your emotional bank account.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person.
No, definitely not. And in fact, Joe, this next question I've got for you, it may not be in your wheelhouse, but you probably have something to say about it.
Yeah.
Before we get to divorce, before we even get to marriage, what about a prenup?
Oh,
You
yeah.
hear
Oh,
that?
yes.
You didn't, and then it's
Yes.
starting to come back.
Yeah. Prenup all the way. Go 100%. I can't say, I'll shout it from the rooftops. People think prenup means one of two things. I'm uber wealthy or I'm planning on getting divorced. Neither of those statements need to be true in order to get a prenup. A prenup is helping you, like a perfect example. Um, Car insurance. I never plan on getting in an accident, but now, okay, by law, I have to get car insurance, but we do anyway, right? I have to take a step in order to do something that might, on a really off slight chance, happen. A prenup to me is the same thing, and a prenup doesn't necessarily need to be like some crazy long document. I'll give you an example. If you had a prenup and you're not even married yet, a good idea, and I tell this to all the kids of my friends, right? Because they've now all got kids in their, late 20s, early 30s, where they're starting to, get in those places and those relationships. I'm like, listen, I want you to just document if your bank accounts, your 401k balance, your student loan debt, your credit card debt, whatever it is, draw a line in the sand that says this is what we had when we came into the marriage. I have one friend, I'm thinking of her right now, her daughter, they bought her, helped her buy a condo. And her mom and dad are, they're very practical people. They said, you know what, it's silly for you to rent. So it's like a small place. It's probably like 800 square feet. It's not, nothing crazy. But I said to my friend, I said, you tell your daughter to call me because she's engaged now. I said, and you need to make sure that she has a copy of that deed somewhere in a safe deposit box, scanned into Google Drive, whatever it is. You need to have some document that's signed that said, yes, I owned this condo before we got married, and here's how much I paid for it. Here's how much equity I have in it, so that if God forbid down the road, you can trace that back. And
Yeah.
that's it. It's just that simple stuff. Simple stuff. 100% prenups, not a bad thing, not for the, multiple divorcees, not for the wealthy. Do it, document, you will be glad you did.
Yeah. I'm glad you're saying that. And I just wanted to throw this in there too, because like we said at
Yeah.
the top of the show is, 40 to 50% of the first marriages end in a divorce,
Oh,
but
yeah,
the
right.
second one, 60 to 67%. So it's almost more important. If you didn't do it the first time through, you best do it the second time, because I think both at the age of that 50, 60 years, you both
Mhm.
may have assets. You both may have homes, and one might have children, the other not. So you want to be able to help protect yourself and your lineage, your kids, whatever, however you want to put it. But you're right. Prenups are so important.
Yeah, very
And like
much.
I said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a millionaire. It's it's not like that anymore. It's not like what we used to hear and see in the movies.
Yeah, even it's something simple as if we have children and we ever get divorced, we're going to agree to a 50-50 parenting plan. A
Mhm.
simple statement. That has nothing to do with money. It just says we're going to agree to parent equally. Great. Unless there's, and then you could add if you want to get really, flavorful about it, unless there's a, financial reason or one of us lives more than X miles or one of us has a substance abuse problem. Like, yeah, you could, put a little icing on that cake, but real simple, just to go in knowing that we feel we're co-parents and we want to do that and God forbid we get divorced.
I get the dog. He,
Right. Oh boy, that's a tough one, right?
you know
Because there's
what?
no
It
Yeah,
is.
this yeah, and that's popping up a lot more now. I actually in my agreements, I have a little clause where I'm like, we have pet parenting plan and pet child support because I have a dog, I have a fur child, and she loves to roll around and stuff and get ear infections all the time, Chuck. And every time I go to the vet, it's $320 for the
Yeah.
exam, for the meds that I could probably just buy off Chewy. And because I know her ears bright red. Look, doc, I don't need to come see you. I know exactly what this is, but nope, we got to have the test. Got to swab the dog. Okay, great. So you're divorced now. That's a lot of money over the course of of a summer. That's probably 6 months of ear infection. So
Yeah, and if people think we're joking, we're not, because like you said, the care of your pets, your dogs, is gotten to be very expensive, and
hmm
a lot of people now really tend to view their pets as part of the family. And I
yeah,
have heard people getting in fights about, I get the dog. No, you don't get the
yeah,
dog. It's my dog. That type of
yeah,
situation. So
yeah,
it's sad, but
absolutely.
yeah, man. Joe, we could probably go on and on and on talking about all of
Lots
this.
to unpack. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, can you remind everybody again where they could go to find out more information about you, about what you do, who you can help, and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's two places. The first is our website, right? EquitableMediation.com. That's if you're looking for divorce services. We do practice in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, and Washington. So we practice in those 6 states. If you're on the other side of the spectrum, go to powerupmethod.com, and that's the book that I'm starting to write now. Hopefully, I'll be out in about June of 2027. It's been quite a slog writing a book, I'll tell you that. As fellow musicians, it's much like trying to write a good song. It lasts 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but it took you 2 years of your life to write it. So I have newfound respect for authors, I really do. But if you go to powerupmethod.com, that's where you can sign up for weekly tips on keeping your relationship strong, and you're using this method that I'm talking about. So we can help you on both sides of the equation. I'd prefer to help you on the power up side. I'd rather put myself out of business on the mediation side. But we do know that there are going to be people who don't necessarily take the steps they need to. So we're here for you if you need divorce and mediation services as well. So.
Excellent. Joe Dillon, thank you very much. This has been super informative. So if and when I ever get married or run into someone I'm going to be with, I know it's a prenup first for me.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to draft it for you, no charge.
Great. Well, thanks again. I hope you have a fantastic afternoon.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.